Film gear is essential to filmmakers, but what kind of gear works the best for mobile filmmakers? Here we have some filmmaking tools laid out in the studio for you to see. Hey everyone, it's Steven here for another session of our Sundance Collab mobile filmmaking course presented by Xiaomi. By now, you should have a pretty good understanding of your phone and how to prepare for your mobile film. Today, we will introduce you several different kinds of gear that are available to you, as well as some DIY solutions that you might find useful. Film gear is essential to filmmakers, but what kind of gear works the best for mobile filmmakers? Here we have some filmmaking tools laid out in the studio for you to see. We often use these on various Xiaomi Studio shoots. Let me go through them with you one by one. First, we have grips, which are especially useful for mobile filmmakers as some phones might not be super friendly for holding when filmmaking. Plus, it gives you extra stabilization for handheld shots and can even allow you to mount other things to your phone. Next, we have our tripods. This is relatively straightforward, so I won't spend too much time here. Next, we have stabilizers, my favorite. There are essentially two different kinds of stabilizers that you can use for a mobile shoot. Mobile-specific stabilizers, and then more general stabilizers. We often use bigger, more general stabilizers for our Xiaomi Studio shoots, as sometimes we are working with bigger, heavier rigs. But oftentimes, the mobile-specific stabilizers work just as well and are even more convenient. Now, we have our mounts, lenses, and filters. Here, I have two different kinds of mounts. One is for external lenses, and the second one is for external filters. As we've touched upon in previous lessons, phones are limited by their aperture and lenses. Virtually no phones have variable apertures or interchangeable lenses at the moment, so this makes mounts very important at times. And here are our mobile lenses. They are made especially for mobile filmmaking. These can come in different sizes and functionalities. They can be especially useful for achieving certain looks like fisheye or anamorphic effects. But for most of our Xiaomi Studios films, we don't actually use external lenses as we find the native lenses work just fine on our phones. But we almost always use external filters. I'll be getting more into that later. Here, we have our external mics. I'll also be getting into this a bit more later. And finally, we have our other gear, such as battery packs, chargers, and bags. Pretty cute, huh? Now, this is a lot of gear, and for some of you, you might already have a lot of it. But if you are just starting from scratch and you need the basics to start out, here are some essentials that we highly recommend. The first one is a neutral density filter, or you might have heard of them as ND filters. They are like sunglasses for your phone. Here it is. As I said before, almost all phones do not have variable apertures at the moment, so if you are shooting at a manual shutter speed, in order to get the most cinematic look, you will need to control the amount of light that enters the lens in another way, which is why ND filters are so important. If I could only recommend one piece of gear that would elevate your mobile filmmaking, it would be an ND filter. The second piece of equipment that I highly recommend would be some sort of stabilization. Just like with other cameras, stabilization is something that will take your film from looking amateur to looking very professional. What about non-camera gear, you might ask? Well, there's a few things that we recommend for you that you might not expect. The first one are ND gels. As phones often don't have the best dynamic range, sometimes controlling light in the scene is just as important as controlling light coming into the camera. We've often used ND gels in different scenarios. For example, on windows in order to make sure that the light in a scene is controlled and is not as complex. Speaking of lights. As you'll see in an upcoming class, lights are really important for mobile filmmakers for the reason mentioned above. Here's a light that we often use for our shoots, since it's both really small and really powerful. Perfect for run and gun mobile filmmaking. Another light that we love to use, as well as our Xiaomi creators, are these little handheld RGB lights. They are really suited for the on-the-go shooting style that a lot of mobile films can incorporate. But just like with any other film shoot, you can really make use of any light source available in order to create the image that you are looking for. Next, we have some smaller gadgets. As I mentioned before, battery packs or extra portable chargers are very important for mobile shooting, as phones tend to burn through batteries quickly when on a shoot. At Xiaomi Studios, we have the luxury of having multiple phones ready and charged for a shoot. But for you, you may literally be shooting with the phone in your pocket, so it's crucial that you always make sure that your phone is charged. Another thing to remember is that phones can sometimes overheat when recording, especially when shooting high resolutions. So one thing we recommend is having a fan that you can use to keep your phone cool. We actually sometimes use these little gaming fans, which we find very useful. The last thing we will talk about in today's class is third-party apps. These can be really useful for getting more control out of your phone. But one thing you will find in many native apps now is that the Pro mode is so versatile and has so many pro functions, sometimes sticking to that is enough. The more tools you have at your disposal, the better. Finally, we have audio. Phones do have internal microphones for recording, and they are getting better and better, but we find that for most of our Xiaomi Studios films, we are actually using external microphones for our shoots. You can either use on-camera mics like this. This is something you might find on a DSLR, but here is one that is specifically made for smartphones. This is one that we used on a previous Xiaomi Studios shoot by a Xiaomi creator who really enjoys shooting documentaries and finds that on-camera mics are the best solution. You can also use external recorders, like this one, or more traditional microphones. Having said that, you would be very surprised what you can do with a microphone on your phone. One good example of this is recording voiceovers or interviews on the go. Now that we've gone through all of the gear that you can buy, I wanted to talk to you about some DIY gear solutions, and I couldn't think of anyone better to talk to you about this than our Xiaomi creator, Fred. Fred is a filmmaker based out of London, and he is actually our very first Xiaomi creator. Hey, Fred.
Hi, Steven.
So I wanted to ask you, what were some of the DIY challenges that you came across when you were shooting? Was there a specific situation that you felt you had to use a DIY solution? What was it, and how did it come out in the end?
So one thing I love about filming with phones is using the shape of a phone to its advantage, right? It's flat, it's light, it's small. On one of my first shoots with a phone, I filmed a lot of car scenes, and we realized that just by using a bit of tape, we would be able to film all of these dynamic car shots that you could do with a bigger camera, but it would be much more time consuming, much more expensive, and just more painstaking to do. And by attaching, just like taping the phone to the bottom of a car to get like a really swooping dynamic shot of the road while it's driving, or the side or the top, it was just a thing that takes 5 minutes to prepare. Whereas with a bigger camera, you would need crew and equipment, and it would take forever to do. A more specific example was recently I filmed a film with a ballerina. Right near the end of the shoot, we were about to wrap. The sound recorders came to me and said, "Hey, why don't we tape the phone to my boom," which is, the stick they use to hold the microphone, and film the ballerina dancing from above to get that sort of a top-down shot. And we all looked at each other and said, "That's a great idea. How did we not think about this?" And we just did it. Literally, like half an hour later, we had a few amazing takes, and they ended up being, in my opinion, one of the best shots in the film. Because it was different, it was something dynamic, and it's unbelievable how easy it was to achieve that. More recently, I've been experimenting with these little, what we call magic arms. And magic arms are cool because I'm able to attach my phone to things that are unexpected. For example, I recently attached my phone to using the magic arm to a pen. And so the phone would be fully linked to the pen. And what was cool is with that, I was able to film very beautiful shots of a pen drawing something on a piece of paper. And that was such a unique shot that I had never seen before. And I don't know, and it's so effortless and easy, and that's what's exciting.
I wanted to ask you, what are some of your essential gear choices and why?
So the main two things I always have with me when I'm filming with a phone, if I boil it down to the bare essentials, is number one, a portable charger. This I just put in my pocket and attach to my phone at all times, because as much as the batteries of these phones get better and better every year, filming for a long period of time takes a lot of energy, and you don't want to run out of battery halfway through your shoots. The second thing, which is in my opinion crucial, is an ND filter. Now this is just something that slides onto your phone. It's literally just, this is a thing, and then you have the filter. And this is very important because it allows you to have more control over your settings in the camera. So I can pick, for example, the shutter speed that I want to get a motion blur that I prefer.
So professional shoots, I wanted to ask, what kind of gear do you find yourself using?
All right, so what would I take with me on a more professional shoot? I think, again, it depends on what the shoot requires. But in general, I will definitely bring either a stabilizer or a tripod, something to, give the phone, allow the phone to be more stable in whatever situation you want to be. But I find it quite helpful to have one of these with me, which is a grip that allows you to, first of all, you can attach the phone to a tripod, but you can also I could attach a light or a microphone here, or anything you want. And also just in general for like hand holding, you have a good grip on it. When it comes to lighting, again, it depends on the budget you have and what you want to spend. But I have these, what I find to survive, I like to have these little LED lights because they usually in low light situations give you they help you out a lot and you can get a lot done with them. I also use external microphones most of the time because especially in outdoor situations, because you never know what's going to happen with wind noises and stuff like that.
And that's it for this Sundance Collab class. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you guys soon.